My name is Simon Green. I'm a student at Coventry University studying a BA in photography. This is my third and final year. It's July 2020. And this small film is part of my submission for a module called Independent Practice Realisation. So last semester for Independent Practice Research, I did a project called New Vibes DJ Sound System. Now this was a community socially engaged project. The idea was that I was going to start up a collective of DJs who could represent themselves in their own social space and platform their marginalised community. And as part of the deal, I was able to document this process and made it my submission. I was taking photos of the project, and some of the participants and the people around New Vibes expressed to me their love of photography, in short, and could I help them to become stronger photographers? We were so busy doing the DJ sound system project that it wasn't really appropriate. We did start, and I was giving out tips and blah, blah, blah. But namely one photographer who was hanging around New Vibes called Simon Watton, sort of become the unofficial photographer for the project. And also one of the stars of the project, a DJ called DJ Nine Lives, or Benji. And he told me as well that he had a deep love for photography. So that got us thinking that maybe there was potential to create a group of photographers that could represent themselves and give themselves a platform in their own community. We were holding a fledgling idea, and around about Christmas 2019, I made a few informal approaches to my lecturers and tutors, discussed it with them. And at that time, it became clear to me that I was able to continue from the research module before Christmas into the realisation module after Christmas, and therefore that would give me twice as much time to develop these projects. So it was really attractive because I really wanted to set up a visual team for the DJ crew. Simple as that. So we went in. And I thought at that time, okay, it's time to formalize it because, it is a university project and we can't, it can't be done on the back of a cigarette packet. So I made a formal approach to Grapevine, and we decided to have a meeting. So we had a big meeting where participants were asked if they wanted to take part in photography workshops. I'm pleased to say we were oversubscribed at the time. There's about 12 people that wanted to do it. So Mel had a difficult task of narrowing that down to 6 participants. And we met, we had a coffee, we had a talk about what this project might look like and what the outcomes could potentially be. Fully democratic. I asked what sort of things people wanted to learn about photography. So we came with this democratic sort of agreement that this is how the content of the workshop should head. Fantastic times. At that meeting, we also decided that a reasonable amount of workshops would be 8, and they should be around 2 hours each. We also decided a few outcomes, like we were going to try and attempt to get everybody to a level where they're able to contribute images for publication in various marketing materials and stuff that's around the New Vibes movement. And also that we would do an exhibition of the work when it was finished, and also that it would be part of my submission for my degree. So that meant, how the hell we're going to do this? So it was a difficult time. Learning is tough, right? So the first thing I decided was that I would try to work out my ultimate course and then pitch it in a way that it was deliverable in 8 weeks. Again, I was speaking informally to some of my tutors about this. Many of them said it was a bit of a hard task because there was a lot to do. So I think the first thing I decided to do, which was significant to the standard, if you like, was accept that because the university is marginal, difficult for some people to engage with, and the institutions are difficult for marginalised people to engage with, that I try to give a flavour of what real life university was about. So therefore we would have a kind of tutor group role, but we would share together, but I was going to try and deliver it in a quite a formal way, because when I'm looking at it, there's a lot to do. So the first places I started to go to for research was things like formal education. So I researched things like O levels and A levels, worked out what their deliverables were and how I could get that into the course. I also had a long think about the type of teaching method I would use, and I did a lot of research because this kind of thing is new to me, but after reading and talking to people, but I came down, this one instinctively felt good to me. It's social constructivism, really, but it's Lev Vygotsky, who's an academic of education. But I used a lot of his work and the sort of work that's based around his area, which is basically, an old apprenticeship style, where it's like you watch the tutor, so the tutor does, the student watches, the tutor does, the student helps, the student does, the tutor helps, then the student does while the tutor watches. And then one more from that. This means that maybe those participants can go back to the community and share their knowledge in a similar way. So that became the ethos, if you like, of my learning strategy or my teaching strategy. And I came down to a 2-hour workshop should be a mini lesson, 24 minutes, work time, which is like practical engagement, 72 minutes, and the debrief, 24 minutes. So this was roughly what I used as my template to design 8 workshops, covering all the areas that I thought were necessary, but I was able to put in things like, lighting and, blah, 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 everything. Visual language, history. I tried to include as much as I could in order to give the participants a strong understanding of the landscape. I'm not examining anybody, it's just understanding, which will make the participants hopefully stronger photographers, which it did. So there's the 8 workshops. So off we go. And I worked out very quickly that clarity was going to be key to this whole endeavour, clarity of communication. So I quickly made a flyer once we'd agreed all the dates, which was challenging, but we agreed all the dates, and there they are. So we announced the workshops. Meanwhile, I was continuing my research, looking at things like socially engaged photography projects. Also went to feminist theory to do with empowerment, because what I was trying to do is empower the photographers to represent themselves. So there's a lot of kind of crossovers between photography and visual sociology and representation and teaching, and it's this for me was the worst part of the whole thing, because we didn't have much time, but I was trying to soak up as much as I could so that I'll be able to do a good job on the delivery. Simple as that. So very difficult time, but we got there. And all the time doing a lot of research. I'll just talk you through some of this. George's work I love. I really like the dignity that subjects have, and it's something that's inspired a lot of my portraiture. Trying to explore ways of showing the work, platforming the work, so beginning to conceptualize ideas around how to do that. Just knee deep in trying to find out as much as I can before the first workshop's finished, the design is finished. Before the first workshop, there was a lot to do with regard to organising the venue and dealing with the institution of the university. The ethical return threw up a few issues. Trying to get permission to use the equipment from the media loan store. All of these were overcome, but it didn't fall from the sky. Trying to organise the transport and how the participants were going to get there and return home safely. There were some considerable logistical and resource issues around setting up the workshops, but we kept going and we're heading towards the first workshop. So what I decided to do was to make like a keynote that would be the basis of the lecture, and I could try and cover all the points that I wanted to cover and do some teaching and blah, 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 and then we could go into a really deep practical session. If you're still awake, I'm going to just quickly walk you through some of these keynotes so you can start to see what I was trying to get to. So, set the scene, how to build a creative environment. It's really important that the teams start to trust each other and understand their part in the wider group. So this is the kind of standard I expect in the workshop. Like, nobody gets laughed at for making a mistake. All mistakes are good. All this kind of stuff. Things about representation. This is the philosophy behind the project, really. Insider, outsider, othering your subject, empowerment of being able to represent yourself or your group. And visibility is a major one as well, because if nobody does this goes back to Gordon Parks' quote that I love, the camera is a weapon. So how we use that weapon is to increase visibility. These are the outcomes. For the group to become stronger photographers, to provide publications, to organise a community exhibition, and help me with my degree. We had lots of things to do. So the first lecture was really about Polaroid. And the reason I did this, because I'm aware that this group come to the university, maybe economically challenged or haven't got the resources and overwhelmed by the idea that, you need a special camera to be a photographer, blah, 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 which you don't. I thought the clearest way of demonstrating that was to go back to Polaroid, because it's one click and you get an image. So we could start to understand that an image can be powerful, even though it's basic, it's still got strength. So that, and also that the participants could get an easy result. They wouldn't be overwhelmed by any technology. Blah, 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 So a little lecture about Polaroid and some of the great work that's been done in Polaroid. So it's not a disposable format. It's a serious creative format. The second workshop was to do with macro and still life. It's like taking photos of your environment or the things around your environment, really, which the participants asked for. So again, at every workshop, reinforcing how to build a creative environment, or try to, and the reason why we're doing it. This is to do with the clarity of the communication. So every week we started the workshop with these basic ideas, just repetition and understanding. Branding the group, we had a democratic vote on what the group might be called. There you go, the winner, New Vibes Visuals. And as a little project, it's like, well, what use can we do that helps the community? So we had that discussion about what we could do, and one of the ideas was that we could help the group, the wider group, to understand their city. So this was, we were going to map the city of all the safe spaces, so we could share that knowledge, and using photography as a tool to do that. Also, it was obvious we needed some equipment, so we decided to set up an equipment appeal. The third workshop was about street social documentary. This is really to do with capturing your own environment in an honourable way, but also knowing that the use, you know, a lot of these photographers would go on to photograph New Vibes events and community events around them. So it's like, how do you do that? How do you look for visual language and lighting and all the rest of it in a moving target when you're you're an event photographer? So street and social documentary was important because I thought this was the most work we would do as a group, you know, events. So that's to do with macro. Just go through. Oh, here's street photography and social documentary. So just running through the use of it. Famous images. You know, even able to talk about things like decisive moment and all sorts of things on the back of these lectures. And portraiture. Again, a major use of the group, that mostly interested in taking photos of their families and friends and the people that they're with and whatever. So we did a special session on portraits. Blah, blah, blah. Just exploring portraits and their use. And, you know, again, these images able to generate big discussions. And then it's into group portraits, which one of the outcomes we wanted was to make a group portrait of New Vibes visuals. So how are we going to do that? Well, I was going to do that because I had to be present in the work. That's what my tutors told me. So I set myself the task of making the group portrait and individual portraits. Group portrait. This is interesting because what come out of this was the final, you know, going back to how groups are represented. This is interesting because when we had a discussion about what our group portrait might be, this came down as a favourite. And it's a famous photo from an album cover, Band on the Run. So we thought we might recreate this as our final piece. So there you go, various group representations. So that's the sort of way I delivered the workshops. And this is the tool that I used, the keynote. Visibility is really important to any artist, and especially for a marginalised group. So Mel and I discussed how we would platform the work kind of thing, and she actually mentioned that we should work more on the social media side because that was a fantastic way of getting the work out there, which is easy to say, but it took some time. So what I did, we set up a collective photo album on Facebook and encouraged the participants to send their work, which was challenging because some of the participants didn't understand the technology and all the rest of it. So this was the beauty of doing a long-term project, because you're able to keep working on those kind of skills and confidence and trust and all those kind of issues. It's so much easier to do this kind of work over a longer period than, say, for example, a fortnight. So these are examples of the workshops themselves. And as I said, some of these photos were contributed by the participants. Just give you a flavour. lots of fun, lots of hard work, concentration for 2 hours, real engagement, using all different places in the university, different equipment. And talking about equipment, always at the top of the list is that you don't need a fantastic camera, a Hasselblad medium format or a Leica or whatever to make a great image. A Polaroid is good. A camera phone, of course, is available to most of us. So the camera phone become our weapon of choice. So I encouraged everybody to use their iPhones or their phones as a serious camera. A couple of the participants did have their own cameras. And there you go. This was a portrait session. I got on the BBC and was able to talk about the project. Really hard work, but everybody loved it. And there we go again. I think there's the first example of the forthcoming group portrait. The decision is made to base our group portrait on that work. During discussions with my tutors, because I was constantly going back to as many tutors as I could to talk about this, because I cherish their opinion. I felt at times a little bit lost, so it's like I was trying to build my own confidence that I was doing the right thing, all those kinds of things. One of the tutors, or a couple of the tutors who remain nameless, said that it was fantastic to do the workshops. However, maybe there was a deeper piece of work that if I could pull out one of the participants and hang a narrative on one of the participants and use the workshop environment and the New Vibes environment to tell a story, that would be very strong. And Anthony, who it was that suggested that I find a participant that had done both the DJ project and the photography project. Well, there was only one, and it turned out to be the star anyway, and that's Benji. So here's Benji. I put that to her, the idea that maybe we could build a special piece of work around her life and use our skills and the photography around the collective to express those ideas, that would be really strong. So here's Benji getting down to writing some ideas out about how we were going to go and do this. So that's about it. And then, of course, with 2 workshops to go, we're on the home straight. I've set up an exhibition at Coventry Market. We've been on BBC. People were aware of us around, like City of Culture, for example. And then the virus come. Although the virus was coming, I think it was about 3 weeks before the official lockdown happened. I was starting to get concerned about what was coming, and so was Mel. And we have some people in the group that are particularly vulnerable physically. And it just didn't seem appropriate to continue. So about 2 weeks before the lockdown, the official lockdown, we dispersed the group. It just wasn't safe anymore. We didn't feel it was safe, and we would be inviting the participants to come to university and blah, blah, blah. So we closed the group. And we said I said to everyone, I'm sorry, the virus is here. We're going to disperse the group for our own safety. Get yourself safe. Make sure everyone is safe. Start that kind of process. And then when the dust begins to settle, we'll pick it up again at some point in the future. So 2 weeks before the finish line, the whole thing collapsed, which is another story. If you've made it this far, thanks for staying with me. I know it's a long and complicated story. So where were we? The lockdown happened. I dispersed the group. Everybody was getting safe. Everybody was making sure their people were safe, and the dust started to settle. So just after the lockdown, we had an informal Zoom meeting just to check on how everybody was. And of course, with this marginalised group, there are people that are economically in difficulties, health, stress, mental issues, loneliness, disengagement. So we started to set up a Zoom meeting, just see how everybody was and see if anyone needed help, those kind of things. Where are we? So, Charlie, I think it was, and Phil, who were kind of moaning because we'd set up a big event that was going to be Charlie and Phil's 30th birthday. This event was going to be at a hall. The New Vibes DJs were going to perform. New Vibes Visuals were going to take photos and show work. And the whole thing was, it was our first real audio visual show, if you like. And everybody was excited and looking forward to it. 30th birthday significance. So Charlie and Phil were kind of like, oh, the lockdown, my birthday party is going to be cancelled. Well, it was cancelled. The venue just shut. Discussions kind of come. I suggested, why don't we do the event online and see if we can make an event for the 30th birthday where everybody will come and have a good time, and we will be able to present, our ideas of music and our ideas of visuals, but mostly to have a good time. So I come off of that Zoom call and I'm like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? Because I was in my flat. I didn't have hardly any equipment. Nobody was moving around. It's like I kind of thought I knew what I needed. I didn't have any software. Just some really basic equipment. So I'm a firm believer in process anyway, so I thought I would just start to do stuff like a DJ show. I was do a DJ show to the canal outside my flat and see if I could begin to work out some of the problems and the issues around getting a multimedia event online, technically and physically or whatever, just to go through the process. So this is the first try, I think. Let's see if we can get this one. So trying to include visuals at an early stage, and how are we going to do that physically? This is pretty post-digital in a way. I was just using what I had to hand to do the job, and visuals was part of that, so I drew them. So this footage now is the first official kind of Zoom meeting where we did an audio-visual event. Let's see if I can get this working. This was recorded by Simon in his flat on his phone. Note the visuals there. That's an iPhone. The sound is still atrocious, the visuals are atrocious, but I'm getting a feel for what we're going to need. So on we go, and I'm trying to work out what the actual process is, how the pace of the visuals, the pace of the music. I still haven't got hardly any equipment. I'm still using an iPhone and these monitors. And this is the software for the music, blah, blah, blah. But it's still, the quality still isn't there. But the process nearly is. So trying to play visuals and music at the same time. And a lot of these times I was experimenting on Facebook. I used to, have a fiddle around, try and make something work, try and improve something, and then jump on Facebook for half an hour to test it out. And the beauty of that is that you get these recordings. I've got loads of these recordings of the early iterations of this project. Thank you, Facebook. So there you go. There's a kind of, still need a sound card and still need some software. But anyway, I discovered some software called OS Studio. And we kind of went from that to this. We went from that to this because I discovered some software that I could use to get the visuals high quality, and also managed to get a sound card, so the audio is really improved. And here's me being open with the process, just showing shots of the studio setup and stuff, hoping that somebody could contribute and help me out, or I could help somebody else out, because at this time the whole world was starting to try and get online, and there was some real dramas. I think a lot of DJs trying to get online and do sets. So this is right on the stage where I believe that we've got a show. Let me just do one more. And it kind of went to this. Is now I've got the software running. I've got a live camera. I've got a number of live cameras actually. I've got slides, I've got film. I'm calling out for contributions from New Vibes and my student friends and my photographer friends. So the idea of this is to try and build an hour show featuring the visuals of New Vibes visuals, the music of New Vibes DJ sound system, and invited guests. We sent out this which became like an appeal for material. So the idea is that we would spend time focusing on trying to make material and ideas for this AV show, and that would give us something to look forward to. We did a show every Friday all through the lockdown. In fact, as I speak, we're still doing them because the lockdown isn't over. You know, we've had incredible contributions and incredible viewers, and the whole thing has been fantastic for communication and giving everybody something to work towards, but it's not too much pressure. So it's ideal in that respect. And yeah, I'll talk about this later, but we now have an amazing archive of material. So when the lockdown finishes, we are ready to take this show anywhere, and we could do this show, music and visuals, anywhere from like local pub or community centre or Wembley, because it's the same process. You know, size and scale, it's the same process. The material is the most important thing. And now we've got a folder of material which is building, and we can go on to do shows in the real world, not just virtually. I just want to spend a couple of minutes explaining how the material exists, because the way we've done it, or I've set up a Dropbox which is shared to members of New Vibes, etc. And the idea is that as we're making new material, we are building this archive. So this is the archive I've been talking about. The work comes in a couple of main ways. The first one is obviously JPEGs. So I'm able to show slideshows. Before I go on, each artist represented has been asked, because of the ethical issues around stealing work and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not stealing work at all. We're reaching out to artists and asking if they would like to contribute. So these are some photographer friends of mine. There's Glastonbury. And work from the students as Alice, Atana, Johan contributed, thank you. Kevin Rossin, he takes fantastic music photos. Mastiaj, who I believe is one of the finest and strongest street photographers in the world working at the moment, contributed JPEGs to this show, so that's an incredible privilege to have him. And same as Peter Dench. sent me some slides of his work that is in the archive, and as well as my own stuff. You know, I'm able to show my own work, which is fantastic, and work of other organisations that I've taken, like Fridays in Coventry, community groups, you know, stuff I've done around isolation, blah, 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 as well as New Vibes itself. So that's the JPEGs. I can also set up JPEGs for things like logos. There's a slideshow of the workshops. Some Corona slogans. Blah, blah, blah. Football slogans. You know, anything is possible. Political slogans. And shots, because I want to show process. Shots of my studio set up. Share my knowledge with others. I'm just showing my process. And one of the best ways that work comes in is through film. So what we encourage people to do, what I'm encouraging them to do, is to turn their JPEGs into movies and then upload that so I can directly play the movie through the software. So that's kind of, you know, here's an example of a local hero artist, Alan, who sent in, you know, his work as a film. So this is probably the easiest way for people to get their work into the show. Blah, blah, blah. So some nice contributions from organisations and artists around my network and our network. Is each DJ represented with their own slideshow. And of course, a lot of this doesn't have audio because there'll be music playing over the top of it. There's some stuff about CET building, blah, blah, blah. So that's this the filing system, and this is the visual material, if you like, for want of a better description, which is on Dropbox, and as I said, can be accessed by anyone that needs it, wherever they are in the world, whatever stage they're on. So the idea is that we can just plug into the Dropbox, and we have the material available. It's getting dark now. If you're still there and you're still awake, respect to you, thank you. I just quickly want to show you the software I've been using, which is the ultimate, I think, for projections, which I intend to use live because I can attach this to a projector, I can attach it to monitors or whatever, or any old matrix. It's kind of complicated, so I won't bore you with it, but for things that can be done, if you see the transition, this is the picture that the audience would see. This is actually what's broadcast, and this is like the waiting room. So, you know, I can set up any number of combinations. Live camera. And I think I've got another one. Yes, I can get down. There's another camera, for example. So, all the films are in there, you know, the holding screen, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I can like pre-produce the show, and then I can dodge around inside the software that I need, and this is what goes out with the audio. Simple, but very complicated. You know, I will say that doing the show live is very challenging because there's so much to think about. I think in a normal situation, say at the BBC, this might have a team of 3. The presenter and plus a couple of producers to chuck the material around. That's the most challenging thing, I think, is trying to multitask. and maintain concentration for a while, but I'm looking forward to when the lockdown ends, we can get some help with the software and there'll be 2 or 3 of us running it and everything should get a bit smoother and slicker. Here's a tour around my current setup, the geek part of the show. So I was locked down for about 5 or 6 weeks in Coventry on my own with no equipment and stuff, trying to get the audio-visual show on the internet, you know, bit by bit, knowing full well that at home in Hampshire I had a lot more equipment, it'd be a lot easier, the internet connection was a lot faster, blah blah blah. So amongst all, I'm a lot happier and the show has become stronger. So here we got records, I've got vinyl, digital and internet. So let's just see if this works. And then I can play. I've got a mic as well. So I can play vinyl, digital and Spotify. So I'm also playing from the internet, so this is the way I can get the DJ's requests into the show. So what we've been doing is the DJ's putting together a playlist and then I'm able to perform the DJ playlist live. Oh, no, no, no. Tease me, tease me, tease me, tease me, baby. Will I lose control? Tease me with your love until I lose control. So that's the audio side of it, and now we just got the visual side of it. Which is here. So it's here that I can run the visuals. And that's the setup, works brilliantly. Like I say, the internet connection here is really strong. I have a lot of cultural capital available. And we've also got the fabulous archive. So at the moment, we can do a 2-hour show, live on air. But not only digitally and virtually, we can take this show to any venue in the world and perform it. We don't care how big the stage is, how small it is, we've got a show. So that's what we've done with our lockdown time. We're coming to the last bit now. So what does the work look like physically in a space? Well, it's all of this as I just described earlier. But in terms of showing off the project, I'm now working on renewing the exhibition that we would have had at Coventry Market for the New Vibes visual team, and we're working on an audio visual event at Fargo as the lockdown starting to come off. We have massive plans for the future. But what does my submission look like? Well, it's a series of portraits, 6 portraits, 1 of each participant, and a group photo. So here's a group photo based on, if you can remember, that photo of the album cover, and individual portraits. Together with a film that describes the workshops from the participants' point of view. So it's the participants who are making the contribution to the audio in that film. And of course this is New Vibes visuals, but I'd like to see it with New Vibes DJs, which is here. A similar style, and there's a group photo. So if you can imagine, I mean, my latest, it's hard to say how this would look, but if you can imagine a room, you know, small village hall kind of size, two massive projections, one of the New Vibes DJ sound system film and another of the New Vibes visuals film, with 12 portraits of the participants, about A1 size, hanging from the ceiling with individual spotlights. And then at the end of the room, the two group shots, one of the DJs and one of the visual team. And that's what the work would look like. We'll try and do this if I can find a venue after lockdown. Well, thanks for your patience. Last night I ran a premiere of the work live online to a private screening for the visual New Vibes team. We got on Zoom and I showed them the film, and that's it. It's now live. So I'll be submitting on Monday morning. Thank you. So tonight we're gonna, hang on. Have you started, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay, so tonight is the world premiere of the piece of work that we've been working on together, which is like an audio-visual piece that came through the New Vibes Visuals project. So thank you for your participation and making the project such a success. It was good fun doing the interviews over the last week. I learned so much more. For example, you know, Tracy was telling me the challenge that she had just getting to the venue, because I thought for some reason that she lived around the corner, but she lived on the outskirts of Coventry, it's miles away, and she had bad leg and everything. So it's like, I've learned so much about the positive way that the participants came to the course with such open minds and a hunger for knowledge. So thank you for that. Here's the work. Mel, you can cue that.
One sec.
I felt like photography is a skill that usually only you could pay for, or if you didn't have the right camera, it would be a stigma, or you wouldn't be. It's a very closed off environment.
I suffer from anxiety and had a bit of anxiety when we first doing it.